You have known Gene Hackman as a Hollywood legend with 2 Oscars, more than 60 years of career and a fortune of $80 million are the things people often mention when talking about him. But what about the things people do not mention? Behind the halo, behind the roles that make the whole world silent is a life full of loneliness, unnamed injuries, and a sudden and heartbreaking ending in a house where no one knocked on the door. Today's story is not just about an actor. It is about the real Gene Hackman and what he left behind, after everything has gone silent. On the cold morning of February 26, 2025, the Sangre de Cristo Mountains gently blew across the Santa Fe Hills, where Gene Hackman's vast mansion stood, silent, isolated, as if it had been withdrawn from the world. Neighbors who had grown accustomed to his quiet began to realize that something was wrong. The gruesome deaths of Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa shocked Hollywood and fans around the world. When maintenance workers came to check on him as scheduled, he called and called but no one answered. Through the frosted glass doors, the lights were off and the curtains were closed, making him uneasy. The police were called, and on a cold afternoon, they entered the house as if entering a world that had stopped moving for days. The body of Betsy Arakawa, Gene's partner of 30 years, was found in the bathroom. Prescription bottles were scattered around the sink, and at her feet lay the body of her beloved Australian Kelpie, Zinna. There was no sign of violence, no wound, just absolute silence, as if life had withdrawn without a call. Gene Hackman, 95, was found near the entrance to the mudroom where he changed his shoes, hung up his hat, and walked his dog out every morning. His body lay on its side, thin and emaciated, as if he had intended to come out to find someone, but his legs had given out. Data from a pacemaker showed that his heart had stopped beating on February 18. That meant they had been in the house for more than a week before anyone discovered them. Betsy's cause of death was determined to be hantavirus, a dangerous virus transmitted by rat droppings, which may have quietly infiltrated the house long ago without anyone noticing. When she collapsed, Hackman, who had mid-stage Alzheimer's, seemed too lucid to understand what was happening, did not call for help, did not leave the house. He just stayed there, living in a space without his loved ones, perhaps in confusion, or in the kind of confused memory that Alzheimer's often brings. Investigators believe he had not eaten or drunk for days. His body showed no signs of injury, no resistance. Just a slow, natural withdrawal, like a lamp running out of oil. The house that had been his place to escape the spotlight, now became the place to witness the end of his life without an audience, no applause, no loved ones by his side. There was only the cold of the desert, the silent walls, and 3 dogs, 2 alive, 1 dead, still lying there as if waiting for a familiar soothing hand that would never return. Gene Hackman had played hundreds of roles, had stood in the middle of hundreds of camera shots, had been a name that Hollywood had to bow down to. But then, when death came, he did not stand in the middle of a movie set, nor did he have a glorious ending scene. He left alone, in a room without dialogue, in a house with no one knocking on the door. Do you remember the last time you saw a house you loved, and then returned to it after many years? Sometimes it's not the house that has changed, but the absence of the people in it that makes the space feel strangely alien. In the rolling hills north of Santa Fe, where the afternoon sun slants through red stone arches and shoulder-high cacti, Gene Hackman's house sits quietly on more than 12 acres of land. To many, it's simply a classic southwestern mansion, but to those who have been there, it feels like a world apart from the rest of America, a place where time seems to have stood still long ago. Hackman and Betsy Arakawa have lived there for more than 30 years, quietly, discreetly, and completely removed from the spotlight he once walked among like a legend. The house was rebuilt to his exact specifications, with high ceilings, large windows overlooking the valley, and a built-in study where he spent hours writing, reading, or simply sitting in the afternoon light filtering through the blinds. When the police entered after the couple's deaths, the house was not merely empty, but had the feeling that it had held the last breath of its occupants. There was an unwashed coffee cup on the table, several unfinished novel manuscripts were still under the brass paperweights, and in the living room, the old piano sat, its keys lightly dusted, as if Betsy had just played a tune and left. Property appraisers had estimated the house at $3.8 million, but those who knew Hackman knew that the house's true value was beyond measure. It is a memory, an unspoken legacy, a private space where a man lived his life to the fullest, and then quietly closed his life without saying goodbye. Hackman's fortune goes beyond his home in Santa Fe. His entire net worth is estimated at $80 million, including luxury properties scattered across the United States, a collection of classic cars worth millions, as well as the royalties from the books he wrote after retirement. He once owned a large estate in Montecito, a clifftop mansion in Pebble Beach, and several other homes that he sold in his later years, choosing to narrow his world to just enough for 2 people and 3 loyal dogs. However, his will, which he signed in 2005, only names his wife as the primary beneficiary. His 3 children from his first marriage are not mentioned. And when Betsy died a week before Jean, the legal status of the estate became unclear, creating a void not only in the hearts of fans but also in a legal system that was trying to determine who would receive the legacy. People call it a forgotten estate, but in this story, what was forgotten was more than just the estate. It was a life that was once admired, once brilliant, and then quietly retreated into the shadows without anyone having time to save it. And while questions about inheritance remained unanswered, that hillside villa still stood there, enduring the cold winds of the Highland nights and the scorching sun of the days. It did not speak, it only waited, but for whom, when the only owner who had ever understood the house as he understood himself, was no longer there? If anyone has ever reached the pinnacle of fame without losing his inner simplicity, Gene Hackman is one of those rare names. His film career did not come from luck, nor from noise, but from a quiet, silent, and persistent character like the roles he left in the hearts of the audience. Hackman started later than his contemporaries. When he entered the film industry, he was over 30, an age that many people thought was too late to start dreaming in Hollywood. But instead of chasing after easy-to-be famous roles, he patiently chose difficult, multi-layered roles, and often of people who were hurt, torn between reason and emotion. It was this choice that made Hackman never become a model star, but an irreplaceable actor. His career was like a deep river, not in a hurry but still swept away an entire period. He won his first Oscar for playing Popeye Doyle in The French Connection, 1971, a tough, gritty performance that captured the conflicted nature of a man who works to protect justice but cannot find justice for himself. 20 years later, he won his second Oscar for playing Little Bill in Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven, a seemingly moral but tyrannical and violent sheriff. These characters were imperfect, but real, and Hackman, with his penetrating gaze and almost invisible restraint, gave them a soul that audiences would never forget. But his achievements were not limited to his 2 Oscars. From the role of Lex Luthor in Superman, a sharp villain with a cold smile, to the image of the austere basketball coach in Hoosiers, or the eccentric father in the Royal Tenenbaums, Hackman always appeared as if he stepped out of everyday life, no frills, no special effects, just a human being facing other humans. And perhaps that is why middle-aged audiences who used to sit by black and white TVs, used to watch movies with their parents still remember him as a part of their youth. He was once paid up to $2 million for the role of Lex Luthor in 1978, a huge number at that time, but Hackman was never overwhelmed by money. For him, the salary was just what he needed to live, and living with the characters that he believed were right was what was worth keeping. That is why, despite all the glory in his hands, he never lived like a star. In 2004, at the height of his fame, Hackman suddenly withdrew from Hollywood. There was no press conference, no farewell party, no farewell, just silence. One day people no longer saw him on screen, and he did not explain. Some said he was tired, others thought he was afraid of repeating himself. But perhaps the real reason was very simple: he had played enough, and he wanted to live the rest of his life as a normal person. And he did it, in a quiet place, with the woman he chose to stay with until the end. No scandal, no applause, just him and a past that was full, but did not need to be shown again. So what do you think about this character? Leave a comment below the video. Before becoming one of the most respected actors in American film history, Gene Hackman was just a boy named Hackman living in a small town in Danville, Illinois. He was born in 1930, in the midst of the Great Depression, into an ordinary working-class family, with nothing special to predict a brilliant life. And as if fate wanted him to learn to accept absence from a very young age, his father left the family when Hackman was only 13 years old. The teenager at that time did not cry, did not ask many questions, just quietly folded his childhood like someone puts a photo in a drawer that is no longer opened. His father's departure left him with a void, not the void of a specific father, but the void of a connection that was forever missing. Perhaps that is why, throughout his later life, Hackman rarely mentioned his family. Those who were close to him described him as kind but distant, caring but never emotionally exposed. He was the kind of man his generation was supposed to be: strong, quiet, unapologetic for his sadness. After a brief radio apprenticeship, Hackman joined the United States Marine Corps at the age of 16, lying about his age. During his 4.5 years of service, he traveled the world as a communications technician. His military years taught him not only discipline but also something deeper. Sometimes, to survive, you have to learn not to show your weaknesses. After his discharge, he moved to New York, then Los Angeles, and finally Pasadena, where he studied acting at a small theater. It was there that Hackman met Dustin Hoffman, a classmate who would become a future film icon. Both, during the early years of their careers, were underestimated, even rejected because they did not have the movie look of the time. But they did not give up. If Hoffman was the rebel with the reckless eyes, then Hackman was the one behind the scenes, silent, quiet, but persistent like a Swiss watch that never stopped running. In his personal life, Gene Hackman first married in 1956 to Faye Maltese, a woman who was not active in the entertainment industry. They had 3 children together: Christopher, Elizabeth, and Leslie. The marriage lasted nearly 30 years, but eventually broke down, largely because the strict demands of a rising film career required Hackman to be away from home frequently. Although he did not talk much about his family, he once shared in a short interview that, "I tried to do well, but I always felt that I was absent when I needed to be present most." After the divorce, Hackman spent many years living alone, until he met Betsy Arakawa, a classical pianist, 30 years younger than him, at a gym in Los Angeles. Unlike his first marriage, love with Betsy came easily, like something that needed no explanation. In 1991, they got married, moved to Santa Fe, and since then almost disappeared from the Hollywood media map. The couple did not have children together, but those who had contact with them said that Betsy was the quiet place that Gene Hackman had been looking for all his life. During more than 30 years together, they chose to live quietly: no red carpets, no couple interviews, no flashy anniversaries, just 2 people quietly preserving each other in a small, private, and sufficient world. And that is why the deaths of both of them occurred almost at the same time, in the same house, a few meters apart, not a cinematic shock, but a very real tragedy. As if, after all, Gene Hackman had not only chosen to withdraw from the screen, but also chosen an ending that required no witnesses, no praise, no tears. He came into the world quietly and he left it the same way. Gene Hackman had everything one could ever dream of: fame, fortune, recognition, 2 Oscars, and a slew of other prestigious awards. But when he stepped out of the spotlight, he didn't take any of that with him. He left the stage without applause, without a curtain call, without trumpets, without regrets. And that choice to reject admiration in order to live the rest of his life to the fullest is perhaps his greatest legacy to future generations. People remember Gene Hackman not because he was a star, but because he was an artist who lived his life to the fullest. In an industry where images are often constructed as masks, Hackman didn't need to act off-screen. He let the characters speak, but always kept his humanity to himself. And it was that distinction that made him special. Although he retired 20 years before his death, his name was still called at the 97th Academy Awards, where his old friend Morgan Freeman stood on stage, choking up for a moment when referring to Hackman as a part of the memory of an entire generation of artists. Not only the audience cried. Even those who worked with him cried, not because he was famous, but because he was someone they truly cherished. In addition to cinema, Hackman also wrote books. The novels he left behind were not great literary works, but each line contained something very real, very human. The characters were silent, living in the past, carrying trauma but not complaining, like himself. For him, writing was a way to say things that acting could not say. And so, although not noisy, those books still quietly found readers, like a late conversation between souls who had gone through the same rain. What matters most is not the $80 million he left behind, or the mansions, the classic cars, or any of the material things that can be counted. What remains is how he chose to live after the spotlight receded, with a single love, a quiet house, and a life that he never felt the need to prove. Hackman once said in a rare interview, long before he disappeared from public view, "I don't think people need to stay in other people's memories forever. I just want to go out as a normal person, leaving behind the best I can of the work I've done." And he did. If Gene Hackman has ever been a part of your memories through a movie, a look, or a line that has ever made you speechless, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because memories, once shared, never disappear. And if you believe that stories behind the spotlight deserve to be told, subscribe to the channel. The journey is long, and we still have many things to remember together.